Let's get into some fun things. So let's talk about, because we all know, you talked a little bit about it. The Cardinals have said certain things, and they've said they're going to spend more. Here's what my understanding is, and maybe you can bring clarity. They plan to have their payroll similar to last year, but what it was going to be going into this year, which puts them close to $200 million. Okay? If that's the case, with expected increases in arbitration, that puts them spending around $52 to $54 million this offseason. Is that about where I'm seeing you nod? So I'm guessing that's what you're.
Yeah, because you had the quotes go viral on Twitter on Monday about that it's going to be the same as last year. So everyone's freaking out that they're going to sit at a 170-ish, 176 payroll, which it was out of context. And Derek Gould did an excellent job, as he always does, to bring context to it. They're planning on bringing payroll, the 40-man payroll, above $200 million at the trade deadline, assuming they're going to be adding to the team. Instead, the season blew up. They traded players away. They never hit that number. So the plan is to start 2024 where they planned on ending 2023, which is above $200 million. Now, the part that I'm still confused about clarity-wise is that $200 million 26-man roster, or is that 40-man? It sounds like it's 40-man. So then how much do you get to bake in for the other 14 guys on that roster? It sounds like it's usually about $5 to $10 million is where it plays out. So I would put the number right now somewhere between 45 and 55 million off the cuff. Now the DeWitts can put more money into that too. So like there's room to grow it. That's just the natural growth. And then non-tenders, trades, like I don't expect Tyler O'Neill to be back at the team this next year. That's another 5 million. I don't expect Dakota Hudson to be back. That's another 4 million. So the number based on roster moves could grow into the mid 60s, which that's money to work with. Even with this market, even if you're trying to get 2 top guys, like you can be creative with it. So I wouldn't be freaking out like those quotes when they came out. I remember I saw it and I was just like, what? And I was like, let me find someone who knows what they're talking about and make sure. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's right where this is supposed to be.
I didn't freak out because I figured my expectation has never stopped being my expectation. And just, I look at Jay Mozeliak, I look at the DeWitts, and here's how I kind of perceived this offseason going, and you tell me if you perceive this. They're not going to get the number one guy pitcher out there. They're going to let the top 2 or 3 teams battle over the first 1, maybe even 2 out there. And we know those guys are Snell and probably Nola.
Yeah.
Maybe that maybe he's the guy that slides in there because a lot of people are putting him super high. Yep. If he does move up there, and if Nola winds up over asking, because right now it sounds like he's really wanting a lot. The Cards could wind up getting him. It could be kind of like the Kyle Loach thing where he overprices himself and finds out later in the winter that there's not a team for him, and he slides into a good position and he says, I just got to take what I can get now because I didn't get what I thought I was going to get. Could happen, but I think it's safe to say those guys are. So I perceive the Cardinals, and Katie Wood said this yesterday. I was listening to something to her. I think Greg winds up being probably the guy the Cardinals get because he's still young enough to be a good guy. He can help bring that veteran leadership to a team. Now, people are going to say he's not the ace. Fair enough. He's a very solid number 2 guy. Okay. But they haven't gone out and spent $40 million for a player. You know, maybe they get him for 23, 25. And as you just said, if we've got that other money, we all know that Glasnow with the Rays is very available. They are eyeballing. They really want Dylan Carlson. And so maybe you package up a Dylan Carlson. They're probably going to want something else, at least a young pitcher. So maybe we throw one of our young pitchers in with that.
I'd pass on Tyler.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Glasnow?
Say more. I'm a big Tyler Glasnow guy.
Sure. I just think he's a 2-pitch pitcher. And
you're getting him for 1 season and $20 million, which you're going to pay him. So we already know that. That's what he's got. 1 year, 20 left.
I think he's I think he'd be a prime example of he max out his talent, his effort, his everything, and you pay him that, and you'll start to see.
Yeah, and he's
his age, I think.
Yeah, very much could be. I have not followed him as much as some of the others. I would, if I had my preference probably of the guys available, I would go a little bit heavier in my trading. And we talked about this before and go Logan with Gilbert with Seattle. I like his stuff. I like who I think he's younger, got more stuff. Bieber's kind of in between. He's not as sexy as a Glasnow. He's been very solid. He last year lost a little off his fastball, so there's still some concerns but you're not paying him a ton either. You get him a couple years. I think he's got 2 years left, and so you get him next year and one more year, and he's not going to be super duper expensive. So any of those guys could be done by trade. But my point of that is you could go find a younger guy who has the potential to be that ace to kind of team up with the Garay and not have to break the bank again on any of those. Any of those are not going to break your bank. The most is Glass now.
Well, maybe I thought of this. Maybe it's a stupid thought, but he pitches indoors most. You come to St. Louis. I know he has blister problems all the time. He misses starts all the time. So he put him in like sweaty St. Louis for a full year. I think he's going to miss
more.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. He was a guy that was really impacted by the sticky stuff. So like he was one of the first guys that was really active about it. But then he made his career high in starts this year. He was good. He was not as good, but he was still really good this year. And his K rate is insane. That dude can strike out guys. That's why I'm a big Tyler Glasnow fan. And then the number is really high, like the salary wise. But that means the cost to acquire a Tyler Glasnow, like that talent. If he's making $6 million a year, you're talking top prospects there. Instead, you're talking Dylan Carlson. I've seen Alec Burleson and maybe like a Michael McGreevy. Like
that's what I said. A young pitcher. Yeah, I think that my understanding is they really covet not Burleson, but Carlson and one like a McGreevy. And that's why I said I think that could want to be in and out. Now you got a top two, and that still gives them some money to go sign like somebody. We've brought it up before, but it could be a Michael Wacha, it could be a Perez. Yeah. There's a lot of lower tier guys that'll eat innings. And
it'd be nice if somebody came up again that was like that was just like a part of the team because they burned their way up through the organization. It was like,
well, I think they might have that guy. I think he just hasn't quite caught on yet. I'm still a big fan of. My brain's kind of freezing here. The guy, it's what's his name's best friend.
Is it Graceffo or Tinkens or
the lefty?
Yeah.
Oh, Jerpy.
No, I know who you're talking about.
He was our big prospect we traded for, and his best friend is
Liberatore.
Yeah, Liberatore. Yeah, I'm still a fan. I'm still high on him because he did well out of the bullpen. He did good on his first.
Flaws in his development, though, that I don't like.
Well, I think the problem is, and he said this last offseason, this is what I said about him. Last offseason, he put almost 40 pounds of muscle on him, and it upped his fastball 4 miles an hour.
Yeah, but can he throw it where he wants? Like, that's the big...
Well, I don't think it was as much...
98, but if it's right down the middle every time, you're going to get whacked.
Yeah.
Well, when I was watching and when he was discussing and when they were, like, critiquing him... It was mostly that he would go in and he could pitch 3 innings really well, but then he just didn't have the strength to keep that fastball and everything going. And by the second, into the second time through the lineup, the lower second end going into the innings 4 and 5, he was getting rocked because which is why he did well as a reliever, long-term reliever, be able to pitch 2 or 3 innings. But the hope is that he can go in this offseason and gain another 10, 20 pounds of muscle plus be able to work on that throwing motion to get it consistent 5-6 innings.
If that's what you're dealing with at your age, like after playing this, like you're not going to be like, oh, that was easy. Why didn't I do that before? Here's 3+ innings I didn't have before. I don't think that's a thing. Like,
you don't think?
Yeah, the thing that scares me is that the Rays gave up on him, and the Rays are the team that can just make anyone a stud pitcher, it feels like. So I'm not as high in Liberatore. I'm high on Tinkens, though. I'm high on Tekoa Roby that they got over from the Rangers. If you look at his baseball reference page, nothing jumps out at you, but his stuff is there. And he's a guy that they've talked about. If he didn't have a shoulder injury going on, there's no way the Rangers would have traded him. He's just one of those arms you want to have in your system. So, but the problem is, again, that's 2025 you're looking at for those guys. So you got to fill out that 2024 again, which is partially why I'm like, I don't think they need to commit long-term to 3 different guys. Like you could do a 1-year patchwork of Glass now. And then the thing with a guy like him or a Bieber, it's like end of the year, if it didn't work out, you hit them with the qualifying offer, they go sign elsewhere, you get a draft pick in return, you recoup a lot of that trade value that you sent out anyways. Cardinals are going to be drafting in the top 5 this year, so they're going to probably get an instant top 100 prospect in their system right away. Even if they sign a Sonny Gray and give up their 2nd round pick, like Randy Flores just kills the draft. So I'm not concerned about them replenishing the trade pool a little bit, the assets. If you talk about like what they would do, I think Sonny Gray is like, I think Katie Wu put like a 70% chance that they sign him, which out of a guy that can sign with any team and you think 70% chance he's going to this one team, that's probably a pretty good indicator. He's a St. Louis Cardinal. And the other team that was was really rumored was the Atlanta Braves, but they just picked up Charlie Morton's option for $20 million, which I was confused by that one. So I don't see them as a player anymore. So I would say Sonny Gray. The part that scares me about a Logan Gilbert is the price point. Like, you're talking Nolan Gorman, you're talking Brendan Donovan plus, and like I love the idea of Logan Gilbert, but is it worth sacrificing the upside of the offense that you have right now, or would you rather go for a Tyler Glasnow and give up Dylan Carlson, or same thing for a Shane Bieber or something like that?
Well, my answer to that, I can give you I would do that.
You can't trade those guys.
I would trade Brendan Donovan. I wouldn't trade Gorman.
You can't trade valuable bench guys. You can't.
Well, but we have a ton of them right now. So
exactly.
Yeah.
People get hurt.
We have no pitchers.
I'm just telling you, teams that are bad have bad people to fill in for their good players.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that, and I'm not. That's why I'm not. That's why. But you got to give up to get. And if you're going to get somebody like a Logan, you're getting a controllable young pitcher for what, 4 more seasons, 3 more seasons, very cheap. Top. You're getting one of the top probably 5 or 10 young pitchers in the game right now.
How have the Cardinals fared in recent years trading away prospects?
Yeah, but is Brendan Donovan a prospect? We've had him 2 years.
I would say yes, he is. Like, he's not yes, he is. Like,
I think he's a good
prospect
player.
of him being something that he isn't now is still there, and it's a good prospect. So yeah, he's a good prospect.
I like Brendan Donovan. He's one of my favorite players on the team, but I don't think that we have to have him to win. I think we have to have Gorman. I think we have to have Jordan. I think we got to have Arenado.
Why can't it all be the same? Just get some pitching.
Yeah.
Like, get a couple, get one really good pitcher or 2 pretty good pitchers and get one really good bullpen guy.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing. If they go for Gilbert, I think they didn't learn their lessons of 2024. They decided we're not going to spend the money and we're not going to take the risk. We're going to go after the sure thing, but we know now we have to give up from our offense, and we're subtracting here instead of they can just add to this team. They can spend the money and keep the offense and add to this team, or they can give up a Dylan Carlson, who I still think has potential, but like.
But you don't have. I mean, how many spots you got? We got so many other players knocking on the door though too. I mean, you just mentioned one of those guys in the trade for the Rangers, but we also got Victor Scott, who is knocking. The guys, just knocked the ball off of everything in fall league. He's looking like the future center fielder of the Cardinals. I mean, again, you got to give some of these guys have to at least have bench roles in the next year.
Which I would, for me, the guy, if you had to pick a regular on the team, I love Tommy Edman, but he would be the guy that I'd be the quickest to give up on. Because I mean, Brendan Donovan, left-handed hitter, still has 5 years of control left. From I think it was.
What are you going to get for an Edman? I mean, that goes back to this tradability. I mean, you just say Glasnow. The reason you're not getting him for as much is you only got 1 year. You only got 1 more year of Edman.
I think that's where I would go. If you get Sonny Gray, you get Tyler Glasnow, and then you get some guy, whether it's a cost control guy in another trade or it's a bounce back guy for that 5th starter spot, then you go into the next, so 2024 plays itself out. You've got Gray, you've got Michaelis, you've got Matz, you've got this 4th guy. You just got to fill 1 rotation spot for 2025. By that point, someone from inside the organization has to rise up. You can't go 4 straight years with trading for guys, signing guys. Like, I think at that point, you're hoping Tink Hence is ready. You're hoping Tekoa Roby's ready. So that's why I think 2024, you can get away with one of those guys being an answer just for next year. And again, if it's a Glasnow type, then you hit him with a qualifying offer. Maybe he comes back for 1 year, 20 mil again, you run it back, or signs elsewhere, you get a 1st round pick. Or if you like him, you re-sign him, right? I think that's where I would rather be aggressive and adding in other ways than giving up Brendan Donovan and then him going on to be an all-star for the Seattle Mariners because they didn't want to spend the money. Like,
you got to be able to maybe I don't know finances maybe, but I would imagine of all the teams, the Cardinals can maybe spend a little bit extra. Maybe teams are thinking maybe you want to pay him $20 million. Well, maybe pay him 23 to get him to come, and maybe a Sunday afternoon game when maybe nobody would come to the Cardinals Stadium because it's 95 degrees out. Well, maybe Tyler's pitching, you get 15,000 extra people to pay for a ticket, and now you've just paid for the the $1.5 million, whatever.
That was something I thought Mozeliak said yesterday that was really interesting, is that he was talking about they know they need to put a better product on the field so people want to watch it, and they were talking about the media rights is a big question about what's revenue going to look like going forward. But he's like, well, one of the ways we can make sure we still have revenue is by keeping ticket sales up. So we like, even if we can't count on Bally and we have no idea what the streaming is going to look like, we have to get butts in seats. And so I think that's part of like, one of the reasons I think they'll be more aggressive than some fans are giving them credit for is they know if they come into spring training, their best starter they acquire is Michael Wacha. Like, I love Michael Wacha, but like, that's not, you can't sell that. No one's going to buy, you're not going to get season ticket holders for that. You're not going to get people coming out when it's 90 degrees out against the Pirates on Sunday.
Exactly.
Like, you have to have guys that are worth watching.
Well, that's what I would, maybe you would agree. Do you think, and I think it's true, if the Cardinals just outright said, hey, this is what we want to spend, but we'll listen to you guys. Are you guys willing to pay a 0.5% more on your ticket sales? That would guarantee a number one starter, guys. Like, would you be willing to pay an extra $2 instead of $38, $40 a ticket? I think Cardinals fan might initially be like, nah, like, you guys make enough money, blah, blah, blah. But I think if you set a standard, like, this is what we're doing, we can operate here, but this is what it's going to take. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they would do it. I think the problem.
I think the money's already there, though. I mean,
I understand the argument, but if they just flat out say, like, sorry, this is what we're doing.
Yeah,
we can do this if.
Well, again, I mean, people have done that with beer and everything else that they're paying in there. I mean, they've all tripled and doubled and quadrupled, and they're still going to games and doing it. I think the thing is you got to have a product on the field. I think they recognize it because if you watch what's going on right now, they're doing a hard press on everything media-wise to get ticket sales going up because my understanding is they're really struggling right now, and on that. So I think there's a recognition that fans are disgruntled. Their ticket sales are down. Their product isn't what they should be.
Well, their product is leaving the field. I mean, honestly, what's their product been the last 20 years? Like the David Freeses, the Pujols, the Wainwrights, like the Yachties. That product's kind of going away. It's time to, get some new product.
Yeah. Which I think that's, I mean,
they've done that with Paul. I think Paul could be stable, like Nolan. I think there is there, but.
Yeah, and Newbar's a sellable guy. Jordan Walker, I think he's primed to break out his second year. So I think they've got the next crop coming, but that's not like they need the initial season ticket sales. They need that money up front now, especially with the media rights being in question. So we'll see what they do with that.
Who do you think's untouchable then? You kind of said a few. Tell me your untouchables.
Well, my untouchables or who I think the Cardinals think are untouchables?
Who are your untouchables?
Okay. My untouchables, it's probably decently long list, and I would say all this is in like.
Or maybe we should do who do you think they should? Who are touchables? Maybe that's better than if it's long.
For me, it would probably be Tommy Edmonds. The top of my list is someone that I would be willing to give up because I still think he has value. Obviously, he can't get you Logan Gilbert, but I think he could definitely get you Tyler Glass now. Alec Burleson's available to me. If it's for like a top guy, I'll talk Brendan Donovan or Nolan Gorman. But like,
I wouldn't talk Gorman at all.
I would only talk him if you're talking like Max Fried. Like that's why I'm like a top, but like realistic stuff. Like I'm not giving up Brendan Donovan. I'm not giving up Nolan Gorman. I'm not giving up Lars Noot. I would actually probably be okay talking Mason Wynn, but not like, again, that's got to be like Dylan Cease and like not a ton extra on top of that. Thomas Sajaci, they just got in the trade, won AA MVP. I think you just have a lot of middle infielders, so if you can capitalize on that value, I'm okay with it. I'm okay talking one of the pitching prospects, but on the major league roster, I think you're doing.
How about outfield?
Yeah,
Tyler O'Neill.
Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carlson are available to me. Like I'm a huge Tyler O'Neill guy. I love him. I think he's going to bounce back wherever he goes. He's probably going to be the next Randy Rosarina type, where it's like how'd they let him go? But I just don't think it's going to work in St. Louis at this point. So yeah, you can give up Tyler O'Neill. You can give up Dylan Carlson. Alec Burleson would be available to me. But not like, let's do a fire sale and get rid of all of them. You still need some of those guys, but...
Yeah, you're not going to trade everybody.
Yeah.
I would agree with a lot of your list. I don't think Edmund has a lot of trade value. The only one I would not... Gorman's an untouchable to me. I don't consider him at all available. I think him and Jordan are your young up-and-coming guys. I think Nolan, Arenado, and Goldschmidt are your solidified veterans in the center. If I'm the Cardinals, the two things I'm looking for right now, in my opinion, which is I would look for a cohesive guy to be my DH. Okay, maybe it's a JD Martinez, somebody who has good clubhouse presence to bring the team together, kind of like how Berkman did. And then I'd be looking for not only a pitcher, but somebody who brings the attitude that's going to sell down the line to all my other pitchers. Because I think that was one of the things that even after, I mean, I love Waino, and I think there was a lot of good things about him. I don't question his ability of teaching young guys and all that kind of stuff. But there's a difference in attitude between Waino and Carpenter and how they set the tone for I think the pitching staff, where Waino was much more of a buddy and let's work this stuff out, where Carp had set a tone. I think Albert did that a little bit last year, and I think that's part of the also success when he rises, everybody rises around him because he just calls that out in everybody, that he's a buddy, but he's also somebody that calls people out. So I think that they need to look for somebody like that. That could be Gray. I don't know Gray well enough, but that'd be the research. Those are the things I'd look for.
Yeah. Question. So you said DH. Couldn't that be Nolan Gorman or Brendan Donovan?
Well, they could be the DH, but are they going to be the cohesive people? You got to bring somebody.
Justin Turner.
Yeah, Justin.
Oh, yeah.
I like Justin a lot. He was a guy that I said last year I thought they should have went and gotten brought in for DH, and also he could fill in for first and third and help relieve those guys and not take much of a step down. But whoever, it could be an outfielder. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't have to be a DH. It could be they trade away and bring in a veteran. Somebody who, like Berkman did. I look at Berkman, and he was a classic example of the team was all there, but they were all business and no play, but he brought the cohesiveness of making them relaxed. And
think about Berkman, like what an absolute asset that man used to be on a team. Like lefty, righty, outfield, infield.
He was awesome. And everyone forgets he was they were down to the final strike a second time in 2011. It was Lance Berkman who came through. So
I say that all the time. I was at the game.
Yeah. Oh, you were at Game 6?
Oh, sure.
What is it? You're like
I was just
the most interesting man in the world. You're everywhere. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, there's a little story behind that too. That's pretty fun. But that's that was quite the game. But I go back and say Berkman was a big reason of their success that season because Albert was so professional, because Yachty was so professional, because Carpenter was so professional. They recognized they had all these guys who were all business and no play, and they needed somebody who could still be business but kind of loosen up the atmosphere a little bit. Even Holiday was very much
what a grown team. That was a grown man team. Just a bunch of grown men.
I would say, I don't know how you guys feel about the offense overall. I'm not a huge proponent of the need to shake it up too much because I think you have Mason Wynn, Jordan Walker, Lars Noot as like some of those, and even like a Brendan Donovan. Actually, Brendan Donovan feels more of like he feels like a young veteran where he already has that stabilizing presence because you have Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt who just aren't vocal leaders. They lead by example. They're quiet guys, but they are the veterans on the team. You have Wilson Contreras though, who's fiery. So I think you've got the right personalities in the clubhouse. And then I think of the near future of this team, like they're already talking Victor Scott could make the opening day roster. So I think you already potentially have the center fielder there. You have a Noot on left, Walker in right, Gorman or Donovan a second, the other one at DH. I think you've already got a full lineup right there. Thomas JC should be up soon. I'm very high on him. I think he's a guy you're going to want to get playing time right away. So I just think with the pitching being so in such desperate need, I'm putting all my money and resources to getting arms and arms and arms. And I just think the offense, it was top 8 in every category up till the trade deadline, and then it plummeted because they had nothing to play for. Like Arenado was a 20 to 30% above league average in the first half, was 30% below league average in the second half. The only 3 guys who were really hitting in the second half was Goldschmidt. He rebounded. Contreras.
Does that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I just
July and August. He's always usually good. June, July, August are his months.
So I think the lineup's fine. Like I actually think it'll be a top 10 unit easily in the game. I think you get some good pitching behind them again, and they're not coming to the plate down 5 every single time. Like I think that takes pressure off them. I think they'll be okay. And then if there's some needs you need to make, you can always find one of those veteran guys at the deadline to bring into your lineup. But again, I just think the pitching's such a big deal.
I think we agree on your assessment, except for I disagree in one aspect, and that goes back to my point I was making. I think they need to go find somebody to bring the cohesiveness together.
Yeah.
I don't think they need somebody. He could be a part-time player.
That's it. Yeah, that'd be interesting.
But I just think that they're missing that guy because you just said it. You said it, and I'm going to use your words. Goldschmidt and Arenado are not vocal leaders.
Yeah.
Contreras is still, he's 1 year in. With all that's going on, I don't know if he has the respect in the clubhouse to be that guy right now. And so I'll go and say, I just feel like they need that Berkman. I don't care who he could play any position. It could be a Justin Turner who plays all from outfield, the first, the third. It could be some guy.
That person can be a coach.
Yeah, I was going to say, what if it's Yadier
It
Molina?
doesn't have to be a player.
That could be too. That's what I'm saying. They just need that guy who's going to
I agree. Yep.
kind of bring that glue together, and it could be in 100 different formats.
Yeah.
Could even be a pitcher. Quite honestly, it could be the pitcher they go and get, and it could be that they get both the leadership and the guy who's going to be that guy to kind of bring the club together and rally around. But it seems like this team, it has a lot of young players.
Yeah.
Very young team with a couple of veterans, and they're great, well-respected veterans, but they're not vocal. And because of that, there seems to be nobody in between to kind of...
They have no identity.
Thank you.
They just go up. They just show up and do their thing.
That's a great way of putting it. Need the identity. That's
It's be the mean team. Be the fun team. Don't be like the disjointed team who sits their catcher.
They need a guy like Scott Van Slyke that they can pull jokes on every other day in the month of July, right?
It's a long season.
Yeah.
If you don't like anybody in your team, it's going to be a bad season.
Yeah, I would agree with what you said. Yeah, they need an identity. That is a great, Scott. I 100% agree with that. They need an identity. I agree with what you said, because we were just talking about that with his dad when his dad was on here just about a month back. The fact that batting when you're 0-3 is way different than when you're 3-0. I mean, it's just a different mindset.
Yeah.
I can't speak of that as much as that guy can, but I take their word for it that Scott and Andy were good enough hitters to recognize that, and I would say, it makes sense. So
I think if you bring in a Yachty, because he's like they've talked about, he's not someone who talks a lot, but when he talks, everyone in the room listens. So if you get a guy like that in the clubhouse, and then I think next year the identity is the young fun team. You've got Victor Scott, you've got Mason Wynn, you got Jordan Walker, Nolan Gorman, Lars Newbar, Brendan Donovan. Like, just play off that identity, play fun, play free, steal a lot of bases, do all the things. And then you have like the Goldschmidt, Arenado, and Contreras side of it that are the veteran leaders in it. I think they are on the verge of it. It's just, again, I go back to April was just such a, I don't even know how you put into a context how jarring of a start to a year that was. And if you're the Pirates, you're like, okay, we can rebound because we expect it to be terrible. If you're a team has real playoff aspirations and you're playing like a bottom 2 team in all of baseball, I think they had the worst record in all of baseball. I just think that just set them so far back for so long.
The whole season was set back. Their pitching, you said it, their pitching was terrible, and then they lost their identity even as pitchers.
Yeah.
I mean, but I also go back and say that goes back to some of the game plan. They were doing the same game plan they've ran several other seasons, right? I mean, you look at how they started this season. You had same Waino, right? Flaherty, okay? And you had Michaelis, right? And then you had Matz, and then you had a bullpen guy that they were trying to convert into a starter. And you go back, and who was the bullpen guy the year before? Do you remember who, not this last year, who was the year before?
Oviedo was in there for a little while, right?
No. Think about the year before, beginning of the season, he did 6 starts, and I didn't even understand that.
Jordan Hicks.
Yeah, I
forgot about that.
Yeah. And the year before, who was it? Dakota Hudson.
He does this to me all the time.
Yeah.
Dakota Hudson.
They try that again this year.
Yeah, they and all these guys were great bullpen roles.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they were trying to convert their role into a starter, and 6 weeks into the season it wasn't working. And like you just said, I'm going to say this again, the year before, middle of the season, we don't make the playoffs, but we made a trade. And who did we trade for?
John Lester, Wade LeBlanc.
And then a year after that?
And then that was the Montgomery Jose Quintana.
Yeah. I've said this several times. Who was the number 1 pitcher going into the playoffs? You put your best pitcher, okay, in the playoffs, game 1. Who was game 1 playoff? Okay, who was the year before?
Was it Lester?
It was.
I didn't remember that. I didn't remember he started game 1.
Now, last year you had Michaelis have one of his best seasons ever.
Yeah.
Year before, Waino had one of his best seasons ever. They started the season as their top starters, and neither one were game 1 starters of their playoffs. I'm just saying, and Flaherty was nowhere to be found, really. And he was available in both of those series, but was really nowhere to be found. What made them think that the same plan that they've had for the last 3 or 4 years was going to work again this year, and all those guys were just that much older? Everybody kept putting a lot of hope on Flaherty. I didn't understand that because if you looked at him the year before, you don't have to be. I mean, everybody thinks I hate Flaherty, but it was just a real practical thing. When you lose a couple miles an hour off your fastball and you're just not pinpoint accurate, you just don't. You don't. He's been the same this year. He was the same guy he was the year before and the year before, which is he's good one game, bad two, good one game, bad two. The games he's really good, he's really on. The games he's off, he's terrible on. He's down about 2 miles an hour. His fastball was sitting between 94 and 96 this year. In previous years, it was sitting between 96 and 99. There's something to be said about that, and of course. You can say he was trying to save his shoulder, but, you have to reinvent yourself if you're going to do that, like Oweno did, and have that great, nasty, curve, rework some pitches. Flaherty wasn't really doing that. I don't know of any pitches he really added to his arsenal the past 2 years that I can think of. So, Mike Lewis had a career year last year, expecting him to now follow that with the same year this year. I thought that was a silly signing in the offseason. I was like, let him play out another year and then sign him cheaper. I mean, he's not a bad guy in your rotation. I just don't think he's what you think he is, and now they're on the hook for $20 million for a guy that's worth more like 12.
Yeah.
2024 St. Louis Cardinals. Do you think they're going to win the World Series?
I mean, I always have to say yeah, but no. I mean, I think you can't. Well, actually, no, that's not true. The Rangers just showed you can go from one of the worst teams in all baseball to be. So I think they need to have championship aspirations.
What did they change?
They did get a new pitching coach
and a new manager.
New manager. So they did do that. But then they also, they brought in Jacob deGrom. They brought in Nathan Eovaldi.
Who didn't pitch?
That's true. But they did get Eovaldi. They traded for Jordan Montgomery at the deadline. So I think the blueprint's there. Rebuild the pitching staff. Now, I think you bring in Yadier Molina to help with the clubhouse, and you give Ollie Marmol his shot. And if it doesn't go well, you can make that managerial change, and that'll be a thing. I just think like the playoffs the last few years have shown, like the Atlanta Braves look like a juggernaut the last 2 years, and then they went out. So like you put together a team that can win in a short series. You have to have two starters you can trust in playoff series, which the Cardinals don't have that right now. You got to go acquire those. You have to have 2 to 3 bullpen arms you can rely on. They have 1, maybe 2 right now you can rely on. I think they've got the offense. I think the blueprint's there.
You think the bullpen will flesh itself out a little better, especially if like Liberatore's in there and then some of these young guys. Everybody keeps talking about everybody keeps talking about the bullpen and we need to go get guys. Only thing I keep thinking of is, do you trust Ryan as your closer? Because if you don't, you need to go get a closer. But I really don't think when I think of the Cardinals bullpen, I think most of their struggles were identity, and I think it was because the starting pitching was so bad they were wearing down their arms so quick, and everybody was going out of roles.
Nobody had a role. Yeah. Nobody had a role.
Yeah, that's true.
Nobody had a role.
I think the weird thing with Helsley is the fact that he won't go back to back. Like I think that might be a reason to bring in at least one more high leverage arm. But maybe I still like Gallegos. I know he's kind of hit or miss this last year, but overall through his Cardinal career, he's been a good reliever. Jojo Romero showed some promise. Then you have like the young guys like Gordon Graceffo and come up. Maybe Tim Kent's he comes up and is a reliever for a year instead of starting some more. Like you've got the internal options, but I do think bringing in one more veteran would probably be a good idea because your bullpen wears thin. If Helsley goes down for 2 months, then it's like, okay, like I feel good about it when they're healthy, but you take 1 or 2 of those arms out, the whole thing blows up.
I agree with that. And that's why I was wondering if that needs to be tooled as much as people think, or is it just you need that one extra addition to kind of be that?
They're going to get worn out if the starting pitchers aren't good.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many bullpen.
Starting pitching has to be a priority.
Has to be.
The one name to watch, I would say, is Yuki Matsui. So Yamamoto you brought up earlier. I think he easily gets the biggest contract besides Shohei Ohtani this offseason. You're talking $30 million annually, 7-8 years. And a posting fee. He's going to get all the money.
You think? Really? You think he's that good, hey? What's his fastball?
So he sits in the 96. So he's a smaller guy too. He's like 5'10", I think.
Yeah.
But he was a barely above 1 ERA.
Yeah, but this is Japan.
It is true.
What's his fastball?
I think it sits at 96. So he's a really good pitcher. And there's been some good analytics coming over of trying to, like, you look back at Tanaka, you look back at Kodai Senga this last year, you look at guys and you can kind of, what are their projections coming out of Japan? Most of them actually have hit their projections pretty well. So they've kind of got a little bit more of a science to it these days than like the early 2000s where you really didn't know where you're getting out of a guy. This is the guy. There's another guy, Suzuki, I think, and Roki something over in Japan, who's supposed to be even better than him. So he'll probably get a $300 million deal when he comes over at some point. But yeah, Yamamoto's getting all the money in the world. And it's weird. The Cardinals are still linked to him, even in the midst of it. They have share the same agent as Nolan Arenado, Jared Wolf. He represents Yamamoto. The Cardinals last 365 days have built a really strong infrastructure in Japan, and they've been doing it for a while, but they have a full-time scout who's built a relationship with Yamamoto's team. Again, I don't think they pay $30 million a year and a posting fee for a guy like that. Yeah, the Large Newbar is really good friends with him. He was just over in Japan watching him. With Nolan Arenado's brother. It seemed like he was with Arenado too, but Arenado works for the agent that represents Lars and Yamamoto. So I don't think Yamamoto's going to happen, but they're in on him, and they've said they want to bid on him. But Matsui is a guy from Japan who's the youngest pitcher to ever hit 200 career saves over there. He throws low 90s, but he has a super high strikeout rate over there, and that actually compares really well because Japan's a contact-oriented league. So when you're striking out guys in a league where they try to hit the contact instead of a league like the major leagues where it's swing and miss, you're going for a home run or a walk. So you strike out a little bit more. Yep, the three true outcome type deal. So those strikeout rates tend to translate. He's a lefty. I think Yuki Matsui has been linked to them a lot. I could see him being there. But I think they get probably one really solid bullpen arm. Maybe they take a flyer using Tyler O'Neill or Dylan Carlson on another guy. But yeah, I agree overall. I think the bullpen will figure itself out. But
yeah, I think they'll add a guy. I don't think there's nothing happening to the bullpen. I just don't think it'll be anybody flashy. Maybe a trade. Somebody just kind of bring some stability. Somebody who can kind of be a closer, eighth inning guy. That's what I see. I think money goes to the starting pitching this year. I think they're going to go get two good pitchers. Or I say two good pitchers. I think they'll find a way to get two guys who can be at the top of that rotation.
I forget the number, but we looked at the last. It was a while ago, before in spring training when we were talking about the Rangers pitching staff and the Cardinals and the team that won the World Series the last 50 years. Their team ERA was 4.35 or under. And so the Cardinals, before the season even started, their accumulated ERA, the combined ERA for the pitching was 4.9. We're before the season even starts, you're not going to make the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's been their philosophy the last few years is they've been middling around 500 by the trade deadline. They go out and add a couple arms, and then they make the run, they make the playoffs. But that is a really risky game to be playing, that every deadline you have to basically revamp your rotation. Like you said, your game one starter is always someone that's outside the organization. It's not the guy that was on your roster opening day. That can't be the same thing this year.
Yeah, I agree. I go back and say, when you mentioned the Japanese guy translating, I don't think he'll be terrible. I don't think he's going to be an ace. I think he's great. I think he's solid number 2. I think he'll wind up being like a Gray. Okay. My career projection to him, unless he gets another 2 miles an hour in that fastball, he'll wind up being more like a Gray, which is, that's a solid career, but definitely respectable. I just don't see him being a Cy Young winner with 96 being your top. When you top at about 96 in Major League Baseball,
that's good, Josh.
That's good, but it's not great. There's a difference between good and great.
No, Josh, in today's 96 plays just fine.
I will say too, he is 25.
That's
he's
true.
Not some 31-year-old coming over past his prime. There's guys. Again, I don't put a lot of stock in it because I don't watch Japanese baseball that often, and I don't know how many people actually do. But the guys who know what they're talking about, for the most part, say he's already a top 10 pitcher in the world, and that's why he's getting because Kodai Senga just came over and was really good. But he got 18 million a year. It's not like they're throwing, and that was just this past offseason. This guy's different. But I do get scared about that. You give 8 years, 30 million a year to a guy who's never thrown a pitch in the major leagues. It doesn't matter how good your stuff is. You could even be culturally. You could come over here and there's just some culture shock. I think it's risky. I wouldn't mind if the Cardinals did it, actually, because I think it'd be a splash and be something different. And he's got the stuff, but he probably goes to the Mets or the Dodgers or whoever can pay in the bag. All
right, I got a question for you because this one's come up a little bit. Okay. And this is out of nowhere, but it's kind of fun because you're talking Japan, you're talking about fastballs, we're talking about stuff. Trevor Bauer, he's trying to come back. The Cardinals have been linked to troubled some players in the past. We've had several that came to St. Louis, small place. You're not the media, and just rebuilt their career slowly. And does a guy like that? He did well with the Reds. Cincinnati's one of the best places for him for a while. Does a guy like that come back from Japan and seek out a team like maybe St. Louis and gives a discount and says, "I understand they've got history. I need to rebuild my persona of who I am as a person. I've come back from Japan and I learned a lot in life. I've had introspective time in Japan. Learn respect."
What is he supposed to learn? He didn't do anything wrong.
Well, but he allowed those situations to occur, right? With those women.
I'm speaking for his thoughts. Like,
yeah. Well,
if I was him, I'd be like, "What? I didn't do anything. Like, I proved I didn't do anything wrong."
Well, he proved it, but the persona of him around the league is still what it is. So he's got to rebuild his image if he's going to play Major League Baseball. I mean, there's just no doubts about it right now. That's the thing.
He's going to go whoever takes him.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Realistically, I don't think the Cardinals are going to do it. They
don't mess with him at all. The guy has talent. He's a number one. Even if he's like your number 4 guy, and you just give him a little bit and let him play.
Still pricey.
Yeah, I think he'll still get money. And then also, like, he was good in Japan, but he wasn't like killing it. He was a high 2 area, which is good. But then
whoa. A high 2 area when? Have you looked at those stats? The last 16 games?
Okay. Well, I guess
16 games, he was a 1.64.
He has
cumulative
things going on too, so maybe we'll just
that's fair.
Discount.
So I just think I think it's a PR nightmare if you bring him in. And so with everything going on, I don't know if they need another storyline, even with the upside of it. And again, I just
he would not be my big splash.
He brings his own stories. Like he has a camera. He has his own YouTube channel.
You get all that, and then even before all the allegations, like he got traded from was it either the Indians or the Reds to the other after he had a blow up in the dugout. Except Mookie Betts just came out and said he really likes him as a guy. So he's a very mixed character to people. I just don't think they would mess with it.
They very well might not. I mean, I just look at the Cardinals. They have dipped into those things a few times over the years. They brought in troublemakers and guys who were not exactly on the good list of PR, and there's been those times, and because they're desperate for pitching, and they know he has the stuff, and his last 16 games were lights out. He got rocked his first 2, and it was basically lack of preparedness because he had taken the season almost 2 years off, and it's different in live practice, and also adjusting to a new league, right? Fair. Different rules. So his first 3 or 4 games were he. After his first 2, he considerably improved. By the last 16, he was a 1-something ERA. I just looked at the stats just the other day, and they were.
Well, that makes sense. I remember his first few starts, everyone was blowing up because he was doing awful. So that makes sense.
Yeah. So all that said, I go back and say, is a guy like that not your big move? But maybe he's the under the radar move. He'll go where he can get a contract. That's what you just said. We know that he's not going to get no $30 million contract. He just played over in Japan for 3? So, maybe the Cardinals go out and they get a John, they get a Gray, they go get a trade for another young guy. They have Michaelis, and versus we were talking like a Walker type money. Maybe they go and they spend $8 million and get a guy like Trevor Bauer and say, hey, we'll let you come in. We're going to make this a quiet announcement. We're not going to, I know you want to do the parade, but this is how we do things. If you want to be in St. Louis, you're not in LA, you're not in New York. This is back when you're in Cincy. Not going to happen. Well, again, could be. I don't disagree with you. I think it's fun to think about what are some options that are reasonable that the Cardinals could actually make. And that seems like a potential one, just given their past, given the desperate need for pitching, and a guy like that who needs to rebuild his career, and what a better place in tradition than St. Louis.
Whoever signs him needs to put a gag order on him. You can't talk to the media. Can't literally stipulate how he interacts with people.
But they've done that. I mean, they told Albert he couldn't play basketball.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about literally you're signing this. You don't talk to just
the Rangers
set up the media appointments.
Which Bauer doesn't really strike me as a guy who's going to say yes.
No, he's not.
I think he's going to be like, you got to let me have my YouTube channel. You got to let me do all this stuff. Be the Bauer outage.
If all the team said no, and then there's one team that said, hey, we'll sign, but there's some there's some boundaries we're going to set up.
Yeah.
He would sign. I think he's a guy that would.
That's fair.
That was my point. My point is there's not going to be a lot of options because a lot of teams aren't going to mess with him.
Yeah.
The Cardinals are just in that desperate situation of pitching. It does seem like it could be a match, and he needs to rebuild his career, and St. Louis would be an excellent place for him to do it. But he's got to change, and there's going to have to, and I absolutely agree with what you just said. You're going to have to put boundaries, but maybe he gets that desperate. It's either Japan or you can play Major League Baseball. But
he did say he likes sushi, so he might just go play back in Japan.
But it's a fun discussion. You got to admit, it's a fun discussion because he brings some flair in pitching, and he adds to your team when he is on. But it goes back to, we also talked about the cohesiveness, and this is, you said Mookie, you liked him. There's a lot of people, he's a yin and yang guy in the clubhouses, from what I understand. Thanks for listening in. Tell them how they can find you.
Yeah, I'm over on Twitter, Josh Jaco, JACO MLB. That's where I'm at most of the time posting stuff. Redbird Rants would be where you can find my articles, so you can find my written work over there. And then we do a weekly podcast with two of our other contributors called the Noot News Podcast. All of you Lars Noot bar lovers out there. So we got some fun stuff going with that. We had Lynn Worthy on last week from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, looking to have like Trevor Rosenthal on soon, some guys like that. So nice. It's fun. It's a lively time. So that's, Twitter, Redbird Rants, Noot News Podcast. That's where you can find me. Well, we'll make sure to include those in the links. You'll probably see some of that as you're watching the episode. And thanks for showing up, Josh. And thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Well, I showed up late, so I'm sorry.
You're fine, brother.
I'm leaving early.
That's all good. Hey, if you're watching, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let people know about us. And if you're able to help support, we love supporters. Support those that support us too. So we'll catch you next episode. Thanks.